I'm going to take the macro view of Echo here. So they asked me to address the question of, is Project Echo right for you? Now, I feel like a lot has been said on that already. So I took a different view. I decided, so what's the big deal about Echo, right? Was the perspective that I was going to take. And yet now, coming after everything we've heard, again, I feel like a lot of this has been said. So we're going to zip through and get very, very specific. So you've heard that the big idea behind Project Echo is the concept of a model that moves knowledge instead of moving people. And most of you are saying, that's obvious, right? That is just such a fundamentally good idea. We all get the importance of doing that. In fact, everything we do is probably aimed in that direction. So I'd like to break that down into how that really, really looks in Echo and why we do it the way we do it. So let's revisit just very briefly the 4 basic principles that you've heard both from Dr. Bell and Dr. Rohrer. The first principle you've heard referred to as a hub and spokes model, and that gets thrown around a lot. And in Echo, it has a very particular meaning. What we talk about is the first principle of Echo is using technology to leverage scarce resources. So the idea of a multidisciplinary team is embedded in that. Not necessarily, but wouldn't it be lovely if we had a multidisciplinary team at the spokes? But the idea of transferring the expertise and the multiple perspectives of a multidisciplinary team to the community of learners is that first fundamental principle. And the idea being that we have scarce resources and we need to make the most of them. We need to share them. So that brings us to the second principle, which is sharing best practices. And again, most of you are doing that. It's a fundamental operating principle of how we go about our day. But what's the purpose of that? The idea is to reduce disparities. And the question should be, how do we do it more effectively? How do we do it in a way that tags on to what Sanjeev talked about, a way that's sticky? And sticky knowledge is a very particular thing, very different than simply disseminating best practices. And that leads us to the third principle of Echo, which is case-based learning. And the question in your mind should be, what's the big deal about case-based learning? Why is case-based learning effective? And what you heard already is that it is uniquely suited to do something we don't do well, to master complexity. So Echo is not a clinical teaching tool. It is not an HCV teaching tool. It is not specific to any one disease, any one geography, any one audience. It's not necessarily exclusive to primary care providers. It is the idea that with the guided practice of a multidisciplinary team, leveraging technology, we can master complexity. And that brings us to the fourth basic principle, which is the idea that we need to check outcomes. We need to evaluate our impact and make sure we're not just doing as well, we're doing better, right, than we can do any other way. So those 4 underlying principles really guide this work. And again, most of you are still saying, yeah, but those seem so obvious, right? So what is unique about Echo is that those 4 elements come together in such an obvious, and I would even say an elegant fashion, right? That the fact that you can describe it to someone as quickly as I just described it to you indicates that there's something really elemental and powerful to it. It is so powerful that we can bend curves, right? It is so powerful that we can change systems. And here I want to pose a question to you, not just about the clinical idea. I kind of think of Echo as a slow food model, if any of you have ever heard of that, right? The idea that it's locally appropriate, it's culturally appropriate, it's linguistic, it's homegrown, right? You're using local resources to feed local people. That it's small bites in community, right? All of those lovely principles of slow food kind of have a nice parallel to Echo, but once in a while, Echo can be McDonald's. It can be fast food. We can get information to people very, very quickly when information needs to come, right? Think about H1N1. Think about Zika. Think about situations where there is a public health crisis and the need to leverage scarce resources, which is the medical expertise you all hold, and the networks into the community that you have built to not just get information out, but help people utilize it appropriately. That's an amazing thing, right? So ECHO can change entire systems that we've already talked about. ECHO can scale, and not just scale across New Mexico's big. We like to think it's, hot stuff, but it's not the world. So we can, and this is 2014. So imagine now, we want to see maps like this across the entire globe. We know that there are ECHOs all across the United States. I don't even have a current map to show you ECHO in the 22 countries so things like this. This should just wow you with the visual impact, right? The idea of scale. Scale is hard. Best practices are easy. How do you scale best practices, again, in a slow food fashion that allows us to take it in slow bites, apply it appropriately, and make it relevant to our own communities, right? So a couple of points to understand what ECHO isn't. You've already heard the second point, that ECHO is not the same as video conferencing, right? I've heard people say, well, we're going to have all of our meetings by ECHO. No, you might be having all your meetings by video conferencing and perhaps Zoom, but that's not ECHO, right? So we want to make that very clear distinction that we are agnostic in terms of the technologies we use. We really like Zoom. We have a deep collaboration to give us a global license that we can share with you. But there might be something better that comes along. And so we are going to use whatever technologies are most relevant to our needs. But the video function is highly relevant. ECHO is not an audio modality because fundamentally, as you heard from Sanjeev, this is really about relationship building. That's the currency of ECHO. And so we need to be able to see one another and read each other's language and understand your insecurities and the questions that you might not ask verbally, right? In order to make effective use of these networks. And it's also fundamentally different from telemedicine. I think you all understand that. Telemedicine is a powerful tool. It bridges the distance gap, right? The geographic distance between care provider and patient. It's a fabulous thing, but it doesn't expand the capacity of the system to do more, often to do more with less, as Dr. Bell said, right? We're constantly challenged to do more with less. So how do you do more with less? You look for a system that's an enabler. You look for a system or a model that's an amplifier. And fundamentally, at its core, that's all that ECHO is an amplification of good work, and it allows you to do what you're supposed to already be doing, perhaps with the money you already have, more effectively and more efficiently. So let's really dig a tiny bit into this slide, because this is the crux of why ECHO is so special, is that there's a lot of big problems in this world, huge, devastating, terrifying problems. We can think about air quality in Delhi. We can think about violence in Chicago. We can think about disease epidemics, and we can think about opiate addiction. And I mean, we could go on and on, right? Big, big, complex problems that we don't fully know how to deal with, but somebody does. And people have good ideas, and people have expertise that we can bring to the table. But how do we share that expertise and apply it locally and relevantly? We don't do it well in our traditional forms of teaching people, right? We could name those traditional forms of teaching people. We haven't yet found the key. We don't think ECHO is the only solution, but it certainly is an effective way to, again, take small networks. ECHO is a small scale solution on one level, right? The micro level of ECHO is a community of about 25 people learning from one another, right? That's the micro version. We can scale that. So you've seen this slide as well. This is what makes ECHO work at the micro level. Within a single ECHO community, this is what makes it fly. Let's look at it slightly differently. How does it work at a macro level? What makes ECHO relevant to all of us? So again, we're developing a community of practice, not just among those ECHO programs, and you may run multiple of them. I've already been approached by a number of you who want to expand your ECHO menu. You're getting inspired to do more. But there is a macro ECHO community of practice, and we call this meta ECHO. So those of you who was in New Mexico for our last meta ECHO conference? Would you raise your hand? So some of them, so another reason why ECHO might be important to you is because it brings you to Albuquerque. Just saying. Some of you are sporting some really beautiful jewelry that I know can only be bought in Albuquerque, right? So it is a shopportunity, but this opportunity to engage in meta ECHO, not just applying ECHO to meta problems, right, which we've talked about. You heard me mention to the Deputy Minister that we can think about ECHO as a solution discussion amongst system improvements, right? As a quality improvement level, a way to discuss interventions. So we can think about micro and macro. We can think about this concept of a network effect. I've heard the network effect described as, you may have hub and spokes, but lots of people have hub and spokes. But when does hub and spokes become a true network? The idea of the network effect is that every new node adds value. So let's think about the micro level. In a community of practice, let's say you're addressing chronic pain or childhood psychiatry issues, every new community participant adds value. And for us across the meta ECHO community, every new ECHO, every new organization, and every new topic you address in every new way adds value. How? We share. That is a fundamental principle. It talks about the expectation of sharing. This is actually embedded in our documents, that if you agree to be part of ECHO, you agree to share. We share with you, you share with us. And that's the only way we're going to achieve that macro level of the network effect. So you see all kinds of other advantages to ECHO, because of course you could say, this is a great idea, I get it, I'm just going to go do it. And we'd say, great, all power to you. But if you actually think about this macro community and joining ECHO as part of that community and contributing to it and drawing from it, then we really get somewhere. Then we can really talk about changing healthcare in Canada and beyond. So I want to point out one thing here. All resources and best practices available to all. Zoom, iEcho, and Box. I was shocked to hear some of you have never heard of Box. If you've never heard of Box, please come see me. Box is where we store and share all of our good stuff. So that is it in a nutshell. I think everything else, joy of work. So we've touched on this again and again. I want to say that both the macro and the micro levels of ECHO really do contribute to joy of work. And in my mind, that's because we don't often enough get a chance to share what we know and to be mentored by others and to receive and to contribute to mentoring of others. So I hope that that question is kind of a non-question.